All
I
right.
hope everybody turns their camera on. That's good.
All right. Well, hello. Welcome to Center City Residents Association's fourth Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Sensitive City discussion. I'm Travis Oliver, Managing Director of CCRA. Now, before we begin, I want to let you know that this part of the presentation is being recorded, and I'm asking everyone to remain muted. If you miss any of our discussions, you can find them on our YouTube page, Center City Residents Association. Thank you all for being here. Today, our presenter is Hugh Taft Morales, who serves as leader of the Philadelphia Ethical Society. Today's discussion is fear and street crime. Do you believe that those most victimized by street crime should be involved in generating effective solutions? When seeking solutions to street crime, what is the most effective balance between looking for solutions within and outside the criminal justice system? Do you believe that your fear of street crime is appropriately acute, or do you think you are excessive or deficient in your concern about street crime? Just some questions you should think about. And on that note, take it away, Hugh.
Thank you, Travis, very much. Welcome, everybody. I'm really pleased to be a part of these dialogues with CCRA. I'm not an expert on any subject. I'm a generalist, but hopefully I can lay out some things in a few minutes that'll help the discussion be a little more substantive. So, as we've always done, since these issues have challenging elements, I'm going to ask that we agree by consensus to the following guidelines. First, the goal of these discussions are to increase our understanding and help create a more ethical society, not to win an argument or challenge others. Two, respect confidentiality. What we say in each group is to stay in that group. You can share general wisdom, but nothing that connects individuals to particular statements or positions. Three, listen respectfully, don't interrupt or engage in side conversations. Four, speak from your experience. Use I statements. Five, don't dominate the dialogue. Make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak. Six, try to be non-judgmental of others and of yourself. And seven, be patient because these are complicated. So please, can I get a sign of assent to that, a wiggling of fingers, a thumbs up, a nodding of heads? They're guidelines that I think really help us stay collectively more effective. So thank you, everybody. I want to also recommend that you consider at the end of when we get back as a whole group and maybe after this discussion, these three questions. What did you learn during this dialogue? What questions remain that have yet to be answered? And what might you do differently in how you go through your life in Center City, Philadelphia? So thanks to Bonnie and Travis and Maggie and Barbara and others for providing information for this presentation. And thanks to Officer Jesse O'Shea of the 9th Police District for hopefully being a part of this discussion and just being there for us. So let me start. I'm going to give three sort of mini reports. One on the problem, two, solutions within the police department or within the criminal justice system, and three, possible solutions outside of the criminal justice system that we have. So first, the problem. Many of you know it. Philadelphia has some of the highest crime rate for a major US city. The city's over 1 million people. We're the highest violent crime rate. Some of our numbers are the highest we've had in history. Last 562 murders, I believe, but between July 2019 2020, that number went up 32%. These days, 30 shootings, I hear, is typical in a city, and up to 100 is not unusual. Those were stunning. I actually would like to get that confirmed because they still seem amazing. Issues that drive this violence, drugs, certainly. Property crimes, from graffiti to arson, are another area of crime that is public out on the streets. Certainly burglary, from shoplifting to home break-ins, are relatively common, especially in Center City, which is most affected by property crime, primarily due to the concentration of wealth here and stores. Obviously, something that has been of great concern to residents is carjacking. That is becoming a little bit more common, almost as a diversion, not even necessarily for the money that carjackings can provide for the people who steal cars. Catalytic converters are being stolen regularly. In my neck of the woods, identifying markings put on the catalytic converter that can limit the profits that can be made. That's a solution. It doesn't necessarily stop your catalytic converter from being stolen. Certainly, one of the most concerning elements are gun sales and gun use. We need state action. We'll get back to that, but we are an armaments pariah. Ease of acquisition of guns in Pennsylvania. Let guns flow from Pennsylvania into neighboring states. Gun shows are open and allow sales without background checks. Issue of ghost guns, guns that is growing, so there's no way for the police to really follow ghost guns sales. And this is a huge campaign issue, especially in the DA race. So that's something we're going to keep our eyes on. Travis, can I get a thumbs up if I'm not breaking up, because I'm seeing some sketchiness?
You're breaking up a little, but you're fine now.
Okay, thanks. And if it gets bad, just wave. I've got you on my screen.
Okay.
Certainly outside of politics, media sensationalizes and plays into stereotypes sometimes, unfortunately, to increase viewership. And as a result, the myths that we have about crime tend to last over time. Certainly, there is an emphasis on the racializing of crime and the racializing of poverty in general. So images of crime on TV and film and in our culture generally tend to focus on Black people, and things are only beginning to change thanks to the fact that there are more Black producers and directors creating images that we all take in at our regular daily feed of video images. So that's an issue that we have to keep in the back of our mind, that we're manipulated in some ways. It's particularly ironic that crime is so often linked to people of color, given the fact that Black, brown, and indigenous communities in this country are the ones that are most affected by violent crime. One book that drove that home for me that I recommend is Patrice Concouler's And They Call You a Terrorist, which goes through her experience in Los Angeles of how crime is a daily fear, and she describes the trauma that's inflicted on Black bodies and is driven deep, even into the cellular level. For anybody who's interested in looking into trauma, Resmond Menica explores this in his book, My Grandmother's Hands, where the trauma is most deeply afflicting communities of color. And clearly we have a penchant for locking people up. Some people call it the criminal industrial complex, where we have a permanent criminal class created in this country, and the various factors that are thrown on returning citizens that really drive people back into crime rather than helping them find a way out of the criminal industrial complex. Some people consider that phrase a little overblown. I do not. So those are some of the problems that we're facing. Solutions within policing, there's a lot. Some of the good news is hearing the police department and the DA's office pledging to cooperate much more the last couple of years. I'd be curious to know from those who know more than me whether that's happening. Back in 2020, Commissioner Outlaw offered her crime prevention and violence reduction action plan, and it was part of what she calls her roadmap to safer communities, and it has some exciting possibilities in it. There's many more innovative and holistic approaches to community policing. Years ago, in the Clinton administration, community policing got a bad name because it really became a way for the police to gather information. It was not really on the ground, but now there's a commitment to nurture power with stakeholders, with parents, schools, residents associations, homeowner associations, community leaders. And I'm hoping that this will really bear some fruit. There's a de-emphasizing of minor or victimless crimes like pot use or prostitution. That was suggested just on the January 24th edition of the Inquirer, that we de-emphasize these lesser crimes. Approaching it as a health crisis is a part of Commissioner Outlaw's approach, and this is across the country. You're seeing this more. trauma-informed policing, which addresses the trauma that the victims of crime feel, the trauma carried by the perpetrators of crime, the traumas of those in the area, and the trauma of police and first responders. This is trauma spread across all of these groups. Inspector Altavi's Love Craighead is very involved in that. She is also involved in the Amir Healing Center, which is dedicated to trying to offer healing of trauma due to violence. Commissioner Outlaw's plan involves problem-solving approaches like peer intervention programs. And they're involved within the police department to try to counter corruption. In New Orleans has a program which they have the little expression, ethical policing is contagious. There's an effort to build up a sense of a respect for the office in a way. There's a de-emphasizing the macho warrior training that sometimes police departments can fall into, and an increased emphasis on de-escalation of potential violent moments. This is something that's done throughout Europe in a regular way, and I think it's great that we're beginning to try to head towards that. Focused deterrence. You've heard this term quite a bit, I'm sure if you're following it. Focusing on specific factors or specific areas identified with crime. For example, the focus on working with gangs, the focus on guns, or the focus on individual criminals. Hotspot focus is a part of this, which is data-driven. The police department's working with universities, Temple and Penn, to try to do better at using data to focus on hotspots. There are some problems that I think need to be addressed. You have to balance data-driven results with personal narratives and people skills, because if you only use data, you sometimes reproduce assumptions or you don't take into account other factors. We can get more into that. Some people were downloading crime apps, which are problematic. They tend to draw people. There's one app that was taken off the market because people were going towards situations of violence in order to document them on the crime app. And that's one of the last things we need, is for people to be drawing themselves closer to violence. But generating grassroots community standards against violence is part of the work that I think this new violence reduction plan is trying to work on. The idea that a community, both law enforcement officials and community leaders, are saying that violence is unacceptable. This community standards is part of what was nicknamed the Boston Miracle in the 1990s. There was a 70% drop in violent crime, and some people claim it was connected to the fact that the community was really involved in setting the standards for how we're going to live together in a community. All of those elements are handicapped by funding issues. To do all of what Commissioner Outlaw wants is going to take a lot of investments, and every department and agency in the city are scrambling to protect their budget or to increase their budget. So that's an issue that makes it difficult. I won't go into a February 8th presentation by Commissioner Outlaw to CCRA, maybe some of you were there, and the Logan Square neighborhood, but it stressed these partnerships with universities, hospitals, large businesses like Comcast, street patrols, marked vehicles. You can see them more now in Rittenhouse Square, foot patrols, police on bicycles that are more with people rather than separated from people. They are focusing on the 8th Street to 20th Street area, Locust to JFK. I think that in a way is focusing on business areas. There's efforts to have better communications with owners, between the police and the owners. And some, Commissioner Outlaw said that some of the administrative personnel have been moved to foot beats, increasing their presence in that way. So it's not taking police officers from other areas, but redistributing them from administrative positions. There are some good results. I've read that the 6th District burglaries are down 21%. 9th District burglaries are down 40%. I think the biggest challenge within the police department is to rebuild trust between communities and the police. And I think Commissioner Outlaw's program offers potential for that. So that's going to be the big stumbling block, I think, getting that trust back. Finally, solutions outside of policing. We really do need to rebuild our communities in the city. And that means partnerships with a lot of different groups. Neighborhood improvement is important, managing trash pickup, planting trees, closing up abandoned houses, remediating, improving them, does decrease crime. All of those things. So we need to focus on how communities themselves can build themselves back up in those ways. Investing and engaging in young people in constructive opportunities, to me, is one of the most recommended by experts. After school centers, programs like Rock the Future. I'll put a link in the chat about Rock the Future because it's a fascinating organization that Bonnie told me about that I did not know before then. This presentation. Job training and support opportunities, clothing, transportation distribution for young people, family support services need to be offered. Families need to be a part of this. Mentoring, like Man Up Philadelphia with Dr. Solomon Jones offers healing for the trauma that so many people in the city are suffering. Young people in areas in particular that crime is a constant thing in their lives, requires mentoring and accountability, addressing trauma alongside a demand for consistency and responsibility on the part of young people. You have to support that with practical things like giving young people clothing for interviews, for jobs, transportation to interviews, stipends or sponsored jobs in neighborhoods to offer to young people. Just this March 1st, just a couple of days ago, the Center Sitter Quarterly had an article by Bonnie that, if you haven't read, I urge you to read. I'll put that link in the chat, along with an article about Man Up Philly. I urge you to support it. You can go to Man Up Philly. That's a great organization that offers this mentoring. Mental health support, cognitive and behavioral therapy, and greater intentionality needs to be offered. Young people can be given skills that allow them to separate their emotions from the actions that they choose to take. This can be helped with anti-bullying campaigns, both physical bullying and cyberbullying that can lead to violence. And again, trauma reduction and healing, linking that to addiction intervention. Drug education and treatment, especially with opioids adding to the problem, have ravaged communities. We need to think how to help communities make alcohol less available, because certainly studies show that alcohol and violence are linked. Things like considering revoking licenses of stores selling to minors. About 40% of violent crimes are alcohol related, according to the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependency. Consider raising liquor taxes, decreasing the amount of outlets for alcohol. One innovative idea was consider revoking the rights to alcohol for offenders who commit crimes when intoxicated, taking away their right to have alcohol. Most possible success, though, obviously, on violence reduction are gun initiatives. Commissioner Outlaw is working with the Boston's David Kennedy and John Day College, hopefully leading to sensible gun laws. But obviously what's needed is political will for this. Again, Bonnie's article in 2019 about a program at the Ethical Society talking about the need to generate political will to demand that our lawmakers take sensible gun action. That's probably the biggest hurdle right now, is that we're up against moneyed interests. I threw a lot out there. Feel free to email me if you want me to send you this outline. But I hope I offered you some of the areas, the landscape for this discussion. And is Officer Jesse O'Shea here? I don't see him. Okay. So if he does come, hopefully he'll be able to share perhaps a little later in our program. So for our small breakout rooms, please consider the questions that Travis mentioned. Do you believe that that those most victimized by street crime should be involved in generating effective solutions? And those most victimized tend to be those people living in communities of color. Second question is, when seeking solutions to street crime, what is the most effective balance between looking for solutions within the criminal justice system and looking for solutions outside the criminal justice system? It seems like we need both, not just one. And then finally, do you believe that your fear of street crime is appropriately acute? Or do you think that you have either excessive fear or deficient fear in your concern about street crime? Because I think a lot of what we're dealing with is sometimes it stretches to extreme proportions. Or do you think that you are taking this threat as you should be? That's all for now. Travis, can we go to the
question from Michelle?
Yeah, Travis, is it possible to put the questions in the chat room also?
Yeah, sure.
I'll do that now.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I'll put it in the main chat room. I don't know how to do that in the.
Yeah, it won't be in the breakout room. You can put it in the main chat room.
So I'm
Yeah,
putting
there's
that.
another question in the chat from Ben. I think we
Yes,
should
Ben.
ask for just some general questions before we go into the breakouts. That was a really
Okay, sure.
fast presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
with a
I
lot of
apologize.
information.
I apologize for that. I think one of the reasons I was doing that was I wasn't sure whether Officer O'Shea was here, so I was trying to hurry through, and I probably shouldn't have done that. So apologize for that. So Ben asked about the victims participating in crime remedies. I think that's very important. It's difficult, but there's various reconciliation programs that are being used. I don't think anybody who's the victim of a violent crime can be forced to participate in remedies for crime, but quite often they are brought in to get clear to the community that the trauma that they've experienced is unacceptable for any community member to have to bear. And dialogue about that is important. There's a lot of criticism that can be made for truth and reconciliation programs, which emphasize telling stories but not having any repercussions for the people who have committed these crimes. I think that is a difficult thing. I feel like there's got to be some accountability through the criminal justice system for violent crimes. But I think there are ways that we can get away from the punishments being so great that we create a permanent criminal class in this country, where we lay on so many punishments and fines that it's impossible to reintegrate into the community after people serve their sentences. It's incomplete, Ben, but there are a couple of thoughts on that question. So there are other things in the chat.
I think that's
Okay.
it. Yep, that's it. So are we ready?
And feel free to pick one of those questions that I put in the chat, or go on to questions that you have. When you come back, if the group leaders can either have somebody report back or they can report back themselves. Thank you.